Next speaker coming up, Justin, I forget your last name, Justin Kelly, sorry. And you're with Tri-City Drafting Design and Services. And Justin is going to be sharing some information, I understand, on tiny homes.
That's correct.
Awesome, so looking forward to it.
That's great, cool, thank you very much. Hello everybody. Today I'm going to focus mainly on tiny houses, a little bit of other stuff that we can touch base on, but obviously tiny houses is a very hot topic right now, especially in Guelph now that they've been approved. So we're going to kind of chat through them. If you guys have any questions, you're welcome to kind of speak up at any time. Just a few things on myself, just in case you obviously probably haven't heard of me, but you might have heard of Tacoma Engineers here in Guelph or Tri-City Drafting and Design. So I work for Tacoma Engineers during the day. It's a structural engineering firm here in Guelph. We do everything from small residential engineering all the way up to large commercial engineering. Okay, so we do everything from a load-bearing wall in your house all the way up to a commercial parking garage downtown. Okay. The nice thing is that while working for Tacoma Engineers, I started my own company. It's called Tri-City Drafting and Design. We do small residential drafting. So at Tacoma, because we focus so much on large commercial projects, that's kind of where the money is for a big firm as like Tacoma. We don't do a lot of in-house residential drafting. So I do it in the evenings, and then I have Tacoma stand it, which is really nice. So they allow me to do that in the evenings. This company has grown quite large. There's a few of us that kind of do stuff in the evenings at Tacoma, and then we take it into Tacoma and we have that stamp. So now if you call Tacoma and you say, I want to take out a wall in my house, or you have a client that says, I would like to take a wall out in my house, they would call us, they'd say, I want to take this wall out. I, as Tri-City Drafting, would come out and measure up the house, draw up the house, send it to Tacoma, and they'd stamp that one beam. So now they're doing what they're actually meant to do. They're specializing in structural engineering, opposed to drawing a house and then stamping it, okay? So those are the two kind of things where you can find me if you ever need any structural engineering or if you ever need any residential drafting, okay? Now, lately, we've kind of started specializing in additional dwelling units, mainly because they've become such a hot topic. So just in terms of agenda, we can kind of quickly go through what we're going to talk about today. Just some definitions, general definitions, some terms that we hear in the industry quite a bit. We're going to focus on additional dwelling units, detached additional dwelling units. We're going to talk about some zoning requirements, building code requirements. We're going to go through a case study just in terms of an actual tiny house that was built. Somebody has a general concept of what they look like, how they get built. We're going to break down the cost of that one that was built, which is always nice. What's the cost to build one of these things, right? And then we're going to go through some resources and we'll have some questions. But like I said, you can ask any questions at any time, okay? So before we even get into the definition, we can talk about why. I mean, the fact that you're here, if you're here to hear this specific topic, you probably know why it's beneficial to build additional dwelling units, right? The main reason, the additional income for your property, right? The additional income for the owner or for the investor. So building a tiny house in your backyard, gaining that extra income from their rent. The second option would obviously be the increase in your property value. So by putting that additional dwelling unit in the backyard, you've increased the property value, okay? We also have multi-generational families becoming very popular with mortgages kind of growing in price. We have multi-generational families where we might have a switch in that family, where we have a small young family in the main house and maybe their parents in these detached dwelling unit in the backyard. We've also seen it where a lot in Europe where we have the main family in the house, and as those kids grow up, they grow up into the tiny house and then they switch. Yeah, kind of like a coach house design, right? We've seen that a lot. I think we're going to start seeing that a lot more in our generations as we kind of continue forward. It could be a family situation. Maybe somebody's sick. They need to be close to you. They could be in that tiny house in your backyard, and then obviously they're fairly simple and cheap to build. Okay. So just some definitions. There's a lot of words that are being thrown around that you hear a lot of when it comes to tiny houses. Okay. The reason I just want to bring that up is because there's so many of these terms that aren't necessarily correct terms. So when it comes to secondary suites, not really a defined term. If you were to look through the bylaw, the Guelph bylaw, you wouldn't see anything that says secondary units, okay? You wouldn't see anything that says basement apartment. Second unit, in-law flats, we see that a lot, in-law suites, and tiny houses. Tiny houses is not a defined term, okay? If you called the building department and said, I want to talk about a tiny house, they will know exactly what you mean. But if you try to search the bylaw and look through the building code, that's not a term that we use, okay? The main term is an ADU, an additional dwelling unit. It's kind of how Guelph defines them. That's how it's defined in the bylaw. And there's lots of different types of additional dwelling units. But the main definition of an additional dwelling unit is a separate suite that is located either in the primary dwelling unit or in a secondary dwelling unit, so outside or detached dwelling unit. So it's a totally separate unit, again, either located in your house or in your backyard, so a separate area, okay? Obviously, all of these additional dwelling units are governed by the bylaw, whatever city they're located in, and they're governed by the actual building code, okay? So just in terms of types that we can kind of go through, lots of different types of additional dwelling units. We're gonna focus on tiny houses, but just in general, we can kind of go through what some of the different ones that we have. So your first one would be a secondary dwelling unit located on your second floor. So you have that in your home, where the second floor has been converted to a secondary unit. We have what I would kind of refer to as a granny flat. Again, not a defined term, but you put an addition on your house. That addition is a totally separate unit and is separated from your primary residence. So in that case, that would be an additional dwelling unit attached. Number 3, similar concept, probably more what we would see in Canada where we actually have a basement. So we have a 2-story primary unit and a second unit on the second floor. Number 4, this is what we consider a basement apartment. Very popular in Guelph. We see these all over the place, accessory dwelling units located in the basement. I actually have one of those in my house. When I bought my house, I put a basement apartment in. I actually heard how much people are getting paid to have basement apartments, and I said, okay, I'm going to do that. That's a great idea. But today we're going to talk about secondary, detached additional dwelling units. So tiny homes separate from the primary residence, okay? Just so everybody's caught up. So today I thought it'd be, oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, a quick question there. On your last slides there, so if I have number 4, can I still have number 5?
Oh, good question. Yeah, in Guelph you can. You can have up to 3 dwelling units on a property. Keep in mind, you can only have 2 in one building and 1 detached. The second you have 3, you have a triplex. So it's a separate building. The other big problem we have in Guelph is that the density requirements of Guelph are not very high. Obviously they're working on it, but rarely in Guelph can you even have a duplex. So in most zoning areas, you can't even have a duplex. You can have a house with an accessory dwelling unit, communication door in between the 2 units. You cannot have an actual duplex. So it's very difficult to have a duplex, even harder to have a triplex in Guelph. Yep.
Could you define duplex? Because my understanding is when you have a principal unit and then another dwelling unit, that's
Yep.
duplex.
A lot of people think that. The easiest way to look at it, in terms of the building code, they're identical. You still require the same fire separations, but a duplex would be 2 separate addresses. You would also have 2 separate services. So the city would require you to have a separate meter, a separate furnace, where an accessory dwelling unit has a host unit that controls the mechanical system,
Host unit.
and an accessory dwelling unit where there's a communication door between the 2. So a 20-minute fire-rated wood door.
Oh, okay.
So you can have this in Guelph anywhere you want.
Yes.
Any residential zone will allow you to have an accessory dwelling unit.
My understanding, not with townhomes that has condo fees.
That could be true. That could also just be a condo rule
Condo
between,
rules, yeah.
There is also some requirements in terms of density where if you have multiple, like attached townhouses,
Attached, yeah.
that will be a problem.
And unit townhomes you can't have.
Of course, yeah. And also keep in mind, they're very hard to do in general because parking is very tough on those.
Yeah.
And also, because there's sometimes it's a large parking lot with shared parking and visitor spaces, very tough to do. Also, a lot of people like to put the additional entrance along the back or along the side, which you don't have. So very tough.
When you combine a 4 and a 5, that doesn't make it a triplex.
A 4 and a 5? No.
No, because 4 is not a
Yeah,
duplex.
so we can look at this one. We could have 1 unit, 2 units, and then a detached accessory dwelling unit. Yeah. The second you put 3 on the same property, you're okay. The second you put 3 in the same building, you have a problem. Okay? That's where you go to triplex. Pretty much the only triplexes in Guelph right now are legal non-conforming. Most duplexes are legal non-conforming as well.
Yes.
So, yeah, keep in mind, the other important thing about this one is there's an interior staircase.
Yes.
Okay, the second you remove that staircase, there's a fire separation with no connection between the 2 of these. It's considered a duplex. So that staircase has to remain. We had a very tough conversation with somebody who took the staircase out without a building permit. And then they went to go sell that particular house. They got caught with an additional dwelling in the basement, but it didn't have a stair. They had to add back a stair into their house to sell their house. Because they couldn't go through a minor variance. They didn't have time. They're trying to sell their house. So, very tough situation for them in that case. So, Again, and keep in mind, the overall concept of that is that the city of Guelph doesn't want single detached family homes to not be able to be converted back to single family detached dwelling units, right? So they just don't want you to take out that stair, and then in the future, somebody buys it, and they can't turn it back into a single home. So I think the easiest way to kind of go through this is if we were to pretend either you yourself wanted to put a tiny house in your backyard, or you have a client that wants to put one in your backyard. So let's pretend that we kind of go through the concept of what it looks like to have a tiny house, or if your client's going to start asking you questions, because that could happen. You might have a few answers they can give them, or maybe you can even kind of diagnose whether they can do it or not. Easiest thing to do is kind of look at the zoning requirement. So the first thing to do is keep in mind any tiny house is required to meet the zoning bylaw, okay? These are all, this is Guelph specific, all the zoning areas where you are allowed to have an additional dwelling unit. Now don't get too concerned, because R1, R2, and R3 zoning is pretty much all residential zones in Guelph. So you can have a tiny house pretty much anywhere in Guelph, okay? Obviously, we strongly suggest contacting somebody like myself, give you an idea of whether you can do it or not. What I've actually started doing is what I call a feasibility study. So you just give us a call, give us the address of the property, we take a quick look at it, and just let you know if it's possible or not. These are kind of the quick things that we would take a look at to see if it's even possible, okay? So the size of the lot. Is the lot large enough to hold and contain an additional dwelling unit? Location on the lot. Where would you like to put it on the lot? Also, maybe what's the lot? If it's a corner lot, it can be very tough to do in terms of setbacks and in terms of proximity to property lines. So if you wanted to locate it in the back corner of the property, we'd have to take a look at if that's possible, okay? Yep.
Would it be easier if your property has a detached garage to turn that into a tiny home?
I would love to say yes. Yeah, the biggest problem with that is, was the garage built correctly in the first place?
Clearly, yes.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, so the main question is, a lot of people put detached garages on a slab. And the second you try to make that into a dwelling unit, it won't meet the requirements. If you have a foundation with a proper frost wall, a 4-foot frost wall, or say a floating slab, like an insulated concrete slab on grade, you could easily turn that into an additional dwelling unit.
So if it's not, you basically have to rip it up and put a tiny home where the
Unfortunately,
detached
yeah.
garage used to be.
Yeah, this feasibility study ends pretty quickly the second I tell them that.
Good to know.
The building department will just say, yeah, you cannot obviously put a house in a shed.
Yeah.
Or a house in a garage that's sitting on piers. Like, that's just not a
I
thing.
mean, you'd be shocked what you're gonna get at Home Depot, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing with that to keep in mind too is the foundation requirements. Obviously, you need to have a proper foundation for a tiny house. The other thing is you're adding plumbing connections to it.
Oh, yeah.
The plumbing connections have to be hardline connections. So if you're trying to add a hard connection to a moving building, that's going to be a significant problem. So the main reason you can't do it is mainly mechanical connections. So.
I'm sorry, your feasibility studies, is that just for Guelph, or will you
Oh,
look
no, we
after
do it
other
all.
cities as well?
We do it all over. Yeah, the
Okay.
case study we're going to talk about today is actually in Kitchener.
Okay.
So, the last thing we kind of take a look at is the size of the dwelling unit. You might say to us, we want this massive dwelling unit in our backyard, and we just kind of have to say, unfortunately, they can't do that. This is the maximum size, this is kind of where it can go on the lot. And that might make a decision for you. Maybe you're looking at buying a property, and we say, no, unfortunately, the lot's too small, you're not going to be able to get it on there, and you just move on to the next property, right? Instead of actually thinking that it's going to work, buy the property, and then find out later, right?
Quick question, you're
Yeah.
allowed 50% of your square footage of your primary house, is it?
Yeah, that's great. So that's actually the next point here.
Oh, sorry.
So in terms of zoning bylaws, there are a few items that you can kind of keep in mind. These are rough, not rough, but these are the actual requirements from the bylaw that you can just keep in the back of your mind if a client's talking to you or if you're looking at a property, okay? So in Guelph, we have a 45% gross area limit. So in general, you cannot have a detached dwelling unit, a tiny house, larger than 861 square feet. Nothing larger than that. You also have the option, this is a fewer option, so you have it's an and statement, so you cannot have a house over 861 square feet, or it cannot exceed 45% of the gross floor area of your home. So the existing home that's on the property, yeah?
Okay. I'm just thinking, because like the house I just got is, I think it's just under 900 square feet, it's a 2-bed. So like, I couldn't really have anything bigger than 400 square feet, which would be a toilet.
And when you say all 4 levels included, is that
That's interesting, yeah, so the city of Guelph will sometimes let you include it. In that case, in your case, they would likely include the
I have
basement.
a problem, so that doesn't work.
Oh, okay.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
As much as I would love to.
yeah. City of Kitchener will not allow you to include the basement. So it's only stories above grade. The nice thing is City of Guelph, they kind of made a mistake and they didn't clarify it in the bylaw. And so they kind of will let you do it, especially in the case where you have 900 square feet. They're like, okay, listen. We'll include the basement in that area and we'll take 45% of that floor area, okay? Now keep in mind, this is a lesser sentence. So with the lesser of the two is the requirement. So it's 861 square feet. Say you have a 1,000 square foot home, you can only do 450 square feet. It's the lesser of the two. So you can only have in that case, you would only be able to have an additional dwelling unit that's 450 square feet. Okay? Yeah?
Might be a dumb question, but you can't do that 2 more times, can you? Because it's 3 accessory buildings.
Yeah, they will only let you have one detached dwelling unit on a property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think they're gonna change that? I'm hearing they're talking about fourplexes now, like into a 4-unit. Do you think we're going there?
I think if we do see that, it's going to be 3 dwelling units in the host unit
Okay.
and still one single
Still
detached
one.
one. Yeah, that's my understanding is that they're going to, say you have a 2-story house, you can convert the basement, main floor, and 2nd story,
Mhm.
and have a tiny house.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
but I don't think we'll see that for a while. Unfortunately, I think most people, oh, I shouldn't say this, but me dealing with the city of Guelph every day, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Go ahead.
The new comprehensive bylaw that's just been
Yep.
currently being appealed now, all of these restrictions that you are talking right now are all being taken away once that new bylaw comes into effect.
Yeah, but these would still be included in them. Yeah.
So, in terms, because one of the main issue that the bylaw addresses is that once you have a secondary unit, because currently you can only have ADU, which in the basement can only be two bedroom, no more than 2 bedroom, and they restrict the size of the square footage. With this new comprehensive bylaw, all of that is taken away.
That's the concept, yeah. Keep in mind, basement apartments, they've already gotten rid of that. There's no maximum floor area if it's in a basement, and the bedroom requirement is gone as well.
Yeah, so
So-
currently with the current bylaw, those restrictions still apply, but the new one, those restrictions will go away once that comprehensive bylaw comes into effect.
That's true, but just keep in mind, to clarify, for basements, it's already in effect. So for a basement, you can have 100% of your basement can be basement apartment.
What about number of bedrooms?
No,
Still
I'm
two?
talking- yeah, I'm talking the
Yeah.
size, the square footage, and the number of bedroom, because you cannot have more than 3 bedroom currently, because the new bylaw hasn't come into effect yet.
Yeah, the easiest way to do that, so the area requirement is gone. You can have 100% of your floor area in your basement, for sure, because that's what mine is. That bylaw came into effect a few years ago. So you can have 100% of your basement be your basement apartment.
I'm sorry, I just did one conversion last year,
Oh, yeah?
less than a few months ago. You cannot.
Okay, let's just take a look, because I know that, so that's not accessory. Oh, no, it's this one here. Yeah, so within your main building, yeah, right here, can occupy the whole of the basement. So in Guelph, right now, you can do 100% of your basement. So this is an additional residential dwelling unit located within a main building. So you only allowed 45% of the gross floor area, except for in a basement, you can do 100%.
Is that the new comprehensive, or is that the?
Yeah, this is already in effect.
This one?
Yeah, this one's been in effect since like 2019. So yeah, you can do that in a basement. But yeah, for additional dwelling units, they're talking about eliminating a lot of these restrictions in the new bylaw. So, okay. So yeah, currently these are the requirements for an additional dwelling unit. Maximum square footage, and then 45% of your gross floor area. Okay, yeah.
Are there rules about the lot size? Like, is there?
There are, yeah, just as we move down here. Maximum of 2 bedrooms. Furthermore, we have 30% of your lot. So you can only cover 30% of your lot with building. That's a residential building, detached shed, any accessory structure, and an additional dwelling unit, okay? It's actually a pretty high percentage when you start looking at lot sizes, but if you have like your typical 100 foot by 50 foot lot in Guelph, very tough to get an additional dwelling unit on that, okay? Also, by the time you take that unit and you apply the correct setbacks, that additional dwelling unit's gonna be your new deck. So you wouldn't wanna do that anyways, okay? Maximum height for the building is 5 meters. That's measured to the peak of the roof, okay? And then this one here in specific, if you would like to put one on top of your garage, there's a little bit higher height restrictions for that requirement. So if you have an existing garage and you want to put an accessory dwelling unit on top of it, you can. But the maximum height is 6.1 meters. Now that's pretty tough to get. So typically what we suggest is when you're putting one on top of your garage, you got to get a little bit tricky in terms of design. We typically suggest knee walls on the side, so a little bit less ceiling height towards the sides of the building, and then obviously a higher sight line in the center. We suggest maybe dormers for your roof structure, or a different type of roof structure where we can measure the height of the building differently. Okay? Yep.
Now, with what we're going through right now, when the new comprehensive bylaw review comes in, are they gonna be different than this, or you think it's still gonna be this?
I think some of these items are gonna change, but there's still gonna be restrictions, right? With any bylaw, they can't allow you to do whatever you want, because we're gonna see, you know, duplexes in people's backyards. Obviously, there'll be restrictions in terms of what can be done, right? Now, I should mention, the bylaw is a municipal ran section, and it can be overturned. That's what we call a minor variance. If you do not agree with the bylaw, or say your property doesn't allow you to do what you'd like to do on the property, you can apply for a minor variance. Minor variance simply says we can't meet the requirements of the bylaw, and we would like to do something a little bit different. You gotta go to committee of adjustment, it's about a 3-month process, it's fairly expensive to do, but if it gets approved, you could have a, say in this case, a detached dwelling unit that's 10 meters tall.
But that's not
Okay.
an prove it problem.
Yeah, that's the whole process of going through the minor variance. So it is a long process, it's expensive. They do it on purpose so that not everybody is doing it for every property, right?
But for minor variance, you have to be the owner to apply. You cannot,
Yeah,
as
that's
an investor,
correct.
you cannot assume they're
Yeah, you
going
can
to
hire
buy
an
it.
agent in this case, like we do minor variance for people as well. But yeah, usually they only has to attend the meeting. They usually want somebody who's the property owner at the meeting.
Yeah.
But we see it with large, like, you know, large commercial buildings. The owner is not coming from Toronto, so we go for them.
Yeah,
right?
but I mean,
So-
the investor willing to buy properties, he cannot do it as a minor variance until they actually buy it, right?
Sure.
And then apply.
Yep. Yeah, so yeah, just something to keep in mind, when it comes to bylaws, they are a municipal ran portion, and they can be changed in terms of minor variances. That's different when we get into the actual building code requirements. Building code's a provincial document, it cannot be overruled and cannot be changed, right? So sometimes you might be dealing with the building department, they say, unfortunately, you have to meet this requirement. There's no board that you can go to or somebody that you can say, I can't meet that requirement, it's too bad, you're gonna have to do that, okay? So in terms of building a additional dwelling unit, obviously you have to apply for a permit, fairly simple. We do probably about 6 a year right now. It's still questionable, a lot of people are really interested in it, but to actually move forward with it can be tough, okay? You gotta meet all the requirements, you have to have perfect property, all these fun things. You have to find a consultant that actually does it, and then move forward with it, right? Obviously, we strongly suggest hiring a consultant to make sure that you are doing it correctly. When you actually hire a consultant, somebody like myself, these are just some of the design criteria that we take a look at, okay? So some of the things that we would chat with you about to actually design that additional dwelling unit, okay? So we would start with number of bedrooms. We know, in this case, the number of bedrooms is limited based on the zoning requirement. So some of these design criteria are already limited based on zoning requirements. So number of bedrooms, we know we can only have 2. Room locations, that's something we would work with you, right? We'd sit down, we'd try to find how we can design that particular area or that room, those spaces, how they would be located, okay? Minimum window sizes, minimum room sizes. Obviously, the building code has minimum room sizes, minimum window sizes, natural light requirements for certain rooms, okay? We would kind of take a look at that. Foundation types. How can we put foundation in that can properly support an additional dwelling unit? And then the mechanical connections. How does the sanitary, or the water actually get to one of these tiny houses in your backyard? So let's break some of these down, okay? One specific chart that I do enjoy are these 2 charts that actually allow you to quickly understand how big or small a room can be, okay? So in this particular case, a living room, this is the minimum square footage for a living room, 145 square feet. If you buy a home and it has, it's labeled as a living room, but it doesn't meet the minimum area requirements, that's fine. It's an existing condition. Say though that it didn't have a window in it, and you applied for a building permit to do something on your house, they would likely make you put in a window, okay? Because there is a minimum natural light requirement as well for each room. So the nice thing is, we would take those considerations. So I would like at least 2 bedrooms, no problem. And then we go, these are the minimum room sizes for those rooms. And we just let you know, because say you came to us and you said, I want 3 bedrooms. We go, okay, listen, we can do 2 bedrooms and a really nice office. But we can't do more than 2 bedrooms. The reason I bring this up though is because by the time you add up a lot of these areas, you're getting close to that 861 square feet regardless. So fitting in an extra office, fitting in an extra space can be kind of tight, okay? The other portion of this just lets you know the minimum window sizes. So you need a certain amount of natural light when it comes to certain rooms. So a living room, in this particular case, I don't necessarily like how this is laid out. This is actually from the City of Guelph's website. But what this essentially is saying is that for a living room, you require 10% of that floor area represented in window. So you need a certain amount of natural light. So in this case, they're just saying 145 square feet, you need 14.5 square feet represented in windows. So say 2 small windows, off to like 2 feet by 7 feet, those windows would get you to your natural light requirements, okay? So this is living rooms and dining rooms, you require 10% for natural light requirements. Master bedrooms, 5%. Secondary bedrooms, 5%. Kitchens and bathrooms don't require windows at all. Not required by code. Okay? You can have just a regular light bulb in there, that's considered acceptable. Okay? Over here, this is the exact same chart, it's just combined roomed areas. So if you were to add up a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen, it's going to be more than 225 square feet. So we take advantage of this when it comes to tiny homes because it allows us to reduce the requirements in terms of square footage for those rooms a little bit easier. So we purposely might make your living room, your kitchen room, and your dining room one big room, although it's a lot of people do it anyways. We purposely do it so we can reduce the area a little bit and then add extra space to that space, like a bedroom or an office. So that would kind of take us to room locations in terms of that list, right? So the easiest thing I think to do is just kind of go through a case study. So this is a particular detached dwelling unit that we did in Kitchener. I just want to mention the fact that it's beautiful and it's really nice, but we were limited on design criteria. Just so nobody says, wow, that's boring. So obviously one of the very first things that we would do, just like we spoke about earlier, we take a look at those zoning requirements, right? So the zoning requirements, we take a look at the site plan. This would be a particular property. You'd give us an address, we'd take a look at it. We have an existing dwelling unit, an existing deck. They want to put a proposed detached dwelling unit in the rear yard. Is it possible? They give us a call. We take a look at it and we go, based on the lot area, based on the setback requirements, you're able to do that. So then we move into the next phase where we actually start designing it for them, right? We break it down here for the city. So in the city of Kitchener, you're actually allowed up to 50% of the house, of the existing dwelling unit, okay? So we broke this down into options for them. Option 1, 50% of the existing unit. This, again, in Kitchener was only main floor and second floor. We added those up, and we took 50% of it. So they're allowed to have an additional dwelling unit that's 91 square meters, fairly large. Unfortunately, they have a maximum, option 2, of 80 square meters. So therefore, we have to move forward with option number 2, maximum of 80 square meters. Proposed dwelling unit area was 97.56. So we maxed out that 80 square meters for them. Okay. Moving forward, we took a look at their lot coverage requirements. So in this particular case, how much lot coverage did they have? Let's just pull up this PDF because the numbers aren't as clear. I can just zoom in here a little bit better. There we go. So we took a look at the lot area coverage, okay? So the city of Kitchener has a little bit of a problem. They only allow 15% of the lots to be covered, okay? Now, after the fact, once we actually had a conversation with them, They were applying their lot area coverage a little bit different. So this changed, and they actually did not need a minor variance. But in this particular case, so if this was in Guelph, let's say, we would take a look at their lot coverage, we'd add up the existing dwelling units, we'd come to a percentage of 25%. In this case, it would say 25.43 is less than 30% of your lot coverage, and you're good to go. Okay? So they were able to move forward. The last zoning requirement we wanted to check was the height of the building. Kitchener has a maximum of 4.5 meters. We ensured that their new one was 3.6 meters tall. So in that case, they're okay to go. They can, we can finish up the drawings in terms of the layout of the building, and we can go forward with their permit application. So that would kind of take us to their floor area. So we start laying out rooms for them, showing them how it's gonna be. With this area, what can we do with it? We go through a few different options, right? In this case, they had 2 bedrooms, a bathroom with laundry, a mechanical space, and a walk-in closet, which was quite nice. A fair-sized living room, and kitchen with a dining space. So this is an eat-in kitchen, we would call it, with an island, right? Once we kind of got to the point of confirming the layout, we just double-checked a few things, right? We purposely designed it so there was no windows along the back wall. We did that purposely because when you have a detached dwelling unit, the requirements for setbacks to your property lines are increased if you have windows on that side. Okay, so minimum zoning requirements ask for 1.5 meters in wall from your property line. If you have a window, it's 3 meters. So that really starts to eat into your backyard. Okay, that's essentially dead space between your fence and your dwelling unit. So we purposely tried to design this one in this case so that there was no windows along the back of that property or along the back of this building, so we could push it as close to the property line as possible. Okay. We've also designed it where, yeah, we could have designed it too where the living room was at the front, kitchen was at the back. Living room window would have been at the front of the building. Kitchen at the back does not require a window. So we wouldn't have a window here or here. We can push this building right into the corner of your property, 1.2 meters on each side, and really start to save your backyard. If we do this and you have a pool, this thing ends up in your pool. Okay. The nice thing too is we actually use a 3D modeling software. So we were able to actually show the client what it looked like on the inside, because a lot of people have a tough time looking at a 2D drawing. So we were actually able to produce a model for them that they could take a look at. It also helps you kind of understand how that space is laid out. If it's large enough, a lot of people are afraid, are these tiny houses big enough for somebody to live in? So in this particular case, you know, we did a, these models can be fun to, let's see if it looks back up. The models can be quite a bit of, can stress your computer out a little bit, trying to spin around them. But it is nice because, like I said, people get a little bit concerned as if there's enough space inside these things. And I understand, I would be too. You're selling this to either a renter or to a family member. They want to know, hey, is there enough space? Oh, this might not work for us. I think my computer's going to have a heyday trying to load the model. It's easier on a desktop. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure if I missed it. What was that square footage of that thing?
Of which one?
This
one here. This one is, I believe it was 79 square meters. We maxed it out. So, yeah, 79 square meters. The maximum being 80 square meters. So we absolutely maxed it out for them.
That's not bad.
Let's see if I can spin around this thing.
So have you already done these, built a tiny home already in any residences involved?
Yeah, the first one that we did was on Yeats. There's a property up there where an investor that we work with, they converted a single family dwelling into a 2 units, unit on the main floor, unit in the basement, and then they built a detached dwelling unit in the backyard.
Which street is it, Keats?
Yeats.
Yeats.
Yeah, up behind the community center.
So based on what you know about Guelph, what's the percentage of homes in Guelph that can have it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Pretty much if your property is downtown Guelph, you're out. Right? A lot of those properties are really tough to get anything onto, even like a shed, right?
So around this area?
around this specific area would probably be okay. Yeah, yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to put a percentage on it.
The only reason I'm asking is because sometimes when you're talking about, you know, like the lot size, this size and that size, sometimes you think I need to have a huge home to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Or a huge backyard. This is the only reason I'm asking is the percentage of homes in the neighborhood that could do it, right?
Yeah, no, that's understandable. No, I can show you the site plan again of that one that we just did. The building was, the lot wasn't fairly large, and they were able to get it in there, right? So, yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any idea, or you could share what kind of rent they were getting on that?
Yeah, we can. I have those numbers. We'll break them down for you.
Okay.
Okay? So this is just a general concept. Again, if you wanted to do it, you didn't feel comfortable, or you had a client that wanted to do it, at least they can be able to see the inside of the space, know what we're working with, see how big it is, feel a little bit more comfortable moving forward that decision, okay? The last things that we would take a look at were the foundation and mechanical connections, right? So foundations, we have two types of foundations that we can work with, okay? First one being, what we would suggest is a frost-protected foundation. So the frost-protected foundation is a thickening of concrete that is not fairly deep. So in this case, it's only 1 foot 2 deep, so 2 feet deep. In this case, you're only excavating 1 foot 4 into the ground, and we're putting on a slab thickening here. So some people call it a club thickening. So this particular foundation, say it's a square, would have thickened foundations around the outside edge, and then a regular slab, 6-inch slab on the inside. This would be prone to heaving, except for the fact that we are protecting it with insulation. So providing insulation around the entire foundation, it's wrapped in insulation. Any of the frost that tries to go underneath this slab, actually in this case what we've done is, these are designed so that the heat of the building escapes and is trapped by the insulation. The frost wants to come underneath the insulation and heave the building, and it's defrosted essentially. It doesn't have the opportunity to heave the building. So the only thing is that this is an engineer design. This does not meet the building code. To have this approved, you have to have an engineer stamp it. That's where Tacoma engineers come in, which is kind of nice. So in this particular case, slab thickening, the cheapest way to do the foundations. The only thing you need to consider is your mechanical connections. You do have to do that, make sure all of your plumbing is done first, similar to a commercial building, right? All of your plumbing is done before you pour that slab. Okay.
Question here.
Yeah.
Depending on the direction your water line and sewage line is coming from, how do you keep that from, let's say, freezing over? So, because you're looking at only just 1 foot deep?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, yeah. So in this particular case, any of your mechanical connections have to be similar to your home. They need to be at least 4 feet below grade,
Yeah.
so they're not frost susceptible. And then in this case, if you bring that connection up, say 2 feet, 3 feet into your building, they're actually frost protected, right? If this footing isn't heaving and my pipe's over here,
Yeah.
it's not gonna heave either.
Yeah.
So that mechanical connection needs to go up into the building and then down 4 feet and over. Okay? So a little bit of excavation for this, a little bit of extra for a 4-inch sanitary line, and your water line coming in the building. Okay?
Any natural gas or any of these, or is it all just hydro?
Yeah, you could do natural gas, that's not a problem. That wouldn't be a problem with natural gas, like for union gas or anything like that. That'd be fine. Yep. The other option is your frost wall. Typical frost wall, this is what you would see on a house, except for the fact that we don't have an excavated basement. Okay? So your slab is up high. We have a 4-foot frost wall for frost depth in Ontario, or I should say in Guelph, and then a standard concrete footing. Similar to what you'd see a house, but your slab would be down here, right? We move that slab up, and this is only 4 feet. So meet your minimum frost depth requirements, and then you can go ahead and build from there. So those are your two types of foundations. Obviously, this one's a little bit more expensive in this case because of the excavation cost. Okay? Concrete, you're about the same amount of concrete. Okay? This is a 4-inch slab, this is a 6-inch slab. This is a very large, like this is 3'7" wide. So you can kind of see how you take that concrete, it's about the same amount of concrete. Okay? So the last item that we would consider would be the mechanical connection. So in Guelph right now, it's a fairly gray area about mechanical connections, and it's great if you want to take advantage of it. So Part 7 of the code says that you cannot have a dwelling unit. The dwelling unit services go through another dwelling unit. But right now, the city of Guelph is allowing you, and I should say any city right now, is allowing you to connect your sanitary to your existing dwelling unit sanitary.
Yeah.
They're also allowing you to do the same thing with the water connection. okay? The only difference is with the water connection is, there's a minimum pressure requirement in the code for water pressure. So you will likely need to install a pump in your house to make sure that the water pressure that's in your house is the same water pressure that's in your backyard. Sometimes it depends how far away your dwelling unit is as well, because if you use a garden hose out back, it's the same water pressure you have in your house. So it just comes down to how far that dwelling unit's away and if you need a water pump, okay? Yeah, sanitary connections, clean connection to your existing house. I've seen two different types of mechanical connections done for sanitary. One, great opportunity, they had a clean out at the back of their house and one at the front of the house. Fairly typical for a residential house. They were able to come in through the back, core through the foundation, and connect to their existing sanitary. The other one, they just dug out down the driveway and connected in the sanitary in front of their house. Technically, by code, I think that's the way it should be done, because you're not going through another dwelling unit for your sanitary connection. But like I said, it's a great opportunity to do it. If you're gonna do one, do it quick and go right through your existing house. Okay? Yeah?
Back on the foundation, what's
Yeah.
your feedback or your recommendation of school pile foundation?
Oh,
in
here
terms
goes
of, like,
up.
cost
Yeah.
saving?
Yeah, that's a good point. I maybe should have included that actually, now that you bring that up. Hilka piles are a great option. You can definitely use them. They're just more expensive. They're about $300 a pile. And depending how the foundation is laid out, you could end up with quite a few of them. I know that there was a article that went around about the first tiny house built in Guelph by a realtor, and his was on Hilka piles. Yeah, so definitely an option. Just a little bit more expensive. There's also like this kind of gray area, because technically that sanitary is coming up out of the ground. It's exposed,
Yeah.
and then it's going into the house. Don't know how we got around that.
Just so they put like some sort of like,
Maybe a heated
insulation
box
around
or
it, yeah.
something like that around it. I could see them accepting a situation like that. I just don't know how pretty it would be, but it's under the house. So those are your mechanical connections. The last thing we wanted to do was to take that exact case study and just break it down in terms of cost, okay? So an easy calculation for everybody. In this case, probably numbers that you guys have heard multiple times. These are just numbers recently that we've heard about over the last few years. These are definitely skewed based on COVID, but just keep in mind, between the $100 to $350 range per square foot. That depends on finishes, everything, right? So in terms of a quick breakdown, if we were to take that additional dwelling unit, that was 857 square feet. We're gonna times that by $100 a square foot. Fairly cheap investment to move forward, okay? That's $100 a square foot. I wouldn't recommend that be the price that you would be aiming for. This would be you're doing a lot of work by yourself. Okay, maybe you're having a guy come in to pour your slab. Maybe you're having an electrician do the ESA, and you're doing the rest of it. So it's a lot, okay? So let's break down a few other prices. As we move forward, we took a look at 125, 150, 175, and $200 a square foot. Okay? I'm guessing a majority, if you were to not do any work yourself, you're into the 175, $200 a square foot easily. Okay? That's connecting to existing sanitary, maybe not a water pump, things like that. Okay? So $200 a square foot. I wouldn't expect a building like this to be much over it. You might have some contractors that are inching into the 250 range. Contractors are expensive. So they get to make up their price, right? So I always suggest get a price from a few different people, right? That's the nice thing too about if you go to a consultant and get the drawings done, you can send that out to multiple consultants, opposed to going with one contractor who does the design for you and you're kind of stuck with it, right? So $200 a square foot, $171. That's pretty cheap to put in your backyard, okay? These particular people, they did a return on their investment. They wanted to double check. They were renting it for $2,300 a month. This is in Kitchener, okay? Fairly expensive. Well, I guess it depends. It's just market rate is really what it is, right? So they were charging $2,300 a month. That's about $27,000 a year. In terms of the an average breakdown of cost, so we took the 150 range. We're ending at a 4.5 payback on that property. So for that particular building, within 5 years, say, that additional dwelling unit is completely paid off and it's just cash flow itself. Now, I'm not a mortgage broker. Don't know much more on that stuff, but that's just a typical breakdown. This was with an investor that we work with. He's building multiples of these in KW right now. So he's able to share that stuff with me. We kind of walk through that process and we kind of work together in terms of taking one, making sure the next one's a little bit better, building those drawings, building that concept, and continuing forward with him.
I think rent is a little higher in Guelph than Kitchener.
I would suspect so, yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if you're around the $2,500 range in Guelph. Yeah.
Because there was an article about a counselor in Guelph that built a two-bedroom.
That was the one on Hill Files, yeah. And I think he had it for 25.
25.
Yeah. It was beautiful on the inside. So, but and that's the kind of thing where when you're looking at that situation, did he pay $200 a square foot? He might have been a bit higher. He was using Hill Pile foundations. He probably had to mess around with the mechanical a little bit, and he had kind of higher end finishes on the inside.
Yes.
So something.
But just a comparison though, right now a two-bedroom condo this size in the south end of Guelph is above 500,000 for a two-bedroom condo.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So in terms of return on your investment, yeah.
I'm just struggling, how does the scoop pile gets more expensive given the fact that you have, for example, you're not doing any excavation?
Yep.
A lot of these work, how does that get to be more expensive than the concrete itself?
Sure. Yeah, what I meant by that was the amount of piles that you need.
Okay.
It depends on how many piles you need. If you're able to design the building somehow that you have 4 piles, 1 in each corner, that's a great idea. Likely not gonna happen though.
No.
Okay? So at $300 a pile, those start to add up. If you need 20 piles,
Okay.
those start to add up pretty quickly, right?
Because foundation, you're probably looking at $15,000.
Yeah, for a slab on grade like this, probably 15 to 20,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just depends, right?
I guess a question for mortgage agents, if somebody builds something like that, can they refinance that?
No,
It's just very new right now.
it is, yeah. It's such a gray area, I find with a lot of things. We're asking building departments, hey, how should we do this? And they're like, how would you do it? So, in terms of the water pump, that was actually initially designed by a mechanical engineer. He said, well, if you need water pressure there, just put a pump on it. And the city said, great, can you stamp that? So that's what it comes down to, right? The liability portion from the building department saying who's gonna take responsibility for it, and then us stepping in and saying, what if we did this, and them accepting that as a
Like you
solution.
mentioned with the units, is it a separate unit or is it not? Are you saying separate utilities or not?
Exactly.
There's a lot of different things.
Yeah, in this case, I would say majority of your connections are gonna be connected through your existing dwelling unit, so your same water line, same everything, right? So that comes down to, is it an all-in price? That's more of an owner situation, how you charge that tenant, right? This way. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, that's okay, go ahead. Now, I just put these references here. You can easily Google these. These are mainly for me to click on. But the one that I was going to bring up, and one that I actually went to earlier, just in terms of that question, City of Guelph has actually laid out a majority of this information for everybody to quickly access. Okay? So if you need a little bit of help in terms of feasibility, you can give us a call. But if you just have a general question about an additional dwelling unit, easiest place to go is the City of Guelph. Okay? They've actually laid it out where they have their zoning requirements, fees in terms of building permit applications, zoning regulations, zoning areas, and we talked about that. Additional dwelling units, so additional dwelling units located within a main building, so a basement apartment or a second floor, and then additional dwelling units located in a separate building. Okay? Just down here they have what they consider an example for an additional dwelling unit. They lay out all their requirements that are required for an additional dwelling unit. And they actually provide you with those same tables that you saw earlier, as well as a sample floor plan. Okay? This is probably the worst floor plan I've ever seen in my life, but it's still good access to look and easily understand what the requirements are. Okay? Yep.
Any possibilities of going above the 80 square meters?
I doubt it. Yeah, I really do. Just because the second that they do it, anybody can do it. It's one of those things, right? Minor variance applications, they are, I don't know the correct term for that, where if somebody's done it in the past, it sets a precedent where anybody can then do it in the future, right? So I'm guessing that if you were to apply for a minor variance for one of these requirements, height they would probably let go, area they probably would not. So the other thing to keep in mind is that you can kind of play with the area a little bit. So what we've done in the past with somebody was we did a 2-story one where it had a full basement. It was 450 square feet or whatever it was on the main floor. But we also included the basement, but it's having the 2 stories that provided us extra room to place different things in there, allowed us to play around with the areas a little bit easier. So having a 2 stories is sometimes beneficial, but significantly more cost to put in a full foundation. So if you're on a budget, putting in essentially a house in your backyard is kind of tough. So.
Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
So how much comparison between if you have a modular home ready to be put there,
A tiny
than
home ready.
constructing?
Okay, yeah, good question. I put this in here, just in case somebody asks that question. These are not tiny houses. I know that
Troy Toys have them for
Troy
sale.
Toys has got them parked out there,
Yes.
signed. Tiny houses, no. I really hope nobody buys one from him, or them, I'm sorry, I don't know who. But unfortunately, that is considered a movable object, it's considered a trailer. You can't park a trailer on your lot and expect everything to be okay. The bylaws, the bylaw is complaint-based, so maybe nobody ever says anything, but the second somebody shows up, they're probably gonna give you a certain amount of days and you gotta get off the property, okay? Keep in mind, there's reasons why it's not considered a tiny house, right? It's on wheels, it doesn't have a proper foundation, the thing moves, you can't have hardline connections to it. If you do, they're probably gonna break or snap off, right? That's why we see like mobile homes, where it's a seasonal mobile home, right? Because you need to turn the water off and drain everything, right? You can't necessarily have one of these in your backyard and expect everything to be okay.
And you definitely can't finance
For sure. Actually, one question I should ask, if you wanted to build an additional dwelling unit in your backyard, can you finance that, or is that all cash
It's,
up
like I
front?
said, it's one of these new things where you just
Okay.
literally, like, there's quite a few new things that are coming up as well, but like, it's a work permit thing for PR or refugees, so this is one of those things that we would talk to the lender and they would tell us, how do you want us to do it?
Sure,
How do you
yeah.
want us to do it? So,
Yeah, how
but
would you like to do it?
modular
Yeah.
homes definitely is considered like a chattel, so
Yeah.
chances of you getting financing.
Now, this particular gentleman that is building them from the case study that we just saw, he's cash flowing at 100%, taking the equity out of the property, using that equity to build the next one. So that's probably a way that you could do it, but that first initial one, you may need a cash flow, just so that you can get it up and running and then start pulling that equity
Yeah.
out. Right. But yeah, just something to keep in mind, if you're chatting with somebody and they go, oh, I'd love to buy this property, I'm gonna go down to Troy's, I'm gonna pick one up, I'm gonna, just, you can't. Yeah.
How about the shipping container homes? Can they be converted into a permanent resident?
They can, yeah. That's the type of thing where you have to put on a proper foundation to put that unit on. And then you'd have to go through the concept of insulating it properly, and then you'd have the bylaw requirements, right? Like when we take a look at this, keep in mind, this thing is completely built, it's drywalled. It shows up in the city, and the city goes, how am I supposed to inspect this? A a sea container, at least they can inspect it as it's being built. The biggest thing with those, though, we do a lot of specialized engineering at Tacoma, and we're kind of one of the guys that takes care of sea cans. And it's always surprising, because you can't just cut a hole in that thing. Like, it's a tin box, so you cut a big hole in it, and everybody thinks it's fine. But in reality, the thing is just a flimsy box, right? So yeah, we specialize in reinforcing sea containers and making them so that you can put a door or something in there. So, yeah.
How many of those tiny homes have we seen in Guelph?
Yeah, I've only seen like 3 or 4. Like we're not, it's not a huge number happening right now. I know, though, I've designed probably maybe 12 in Guelph,
Okay.
and 1 has been built.
Where is that?
It's on Yeats.
Oh, the one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind, it's not because they're not, it's not feasible or they're just not building it. A lot of it was the interest rates going up and people are going, okay, let's hold off. We'll reconsider this in the future. At least we have the drawings are done and we can follow up in the future.
Do you see more people taking a bite on this? Like more interested people building?
Oh yeah, we probably get a call a week of somebody that wants to build a tiny house.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah, and then, out of the 52 people that call us a year that want to do it, 20 of them probably can, feasibility-wise, can do it.
Yeah.
And then out of the 20, 12 of them actually moved forward with us in terms of pricing and cost and designing it for them, right? So it is a large number, but it's not like it's hundreds of thousands of them happening, right? So.
What is the cost to do the drawings and just rough estimate?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we're probably in like the $2,000 range. Yeah, feasibility study, and then follow up with a site plan. Drawings, once the drawings are approved, like you like the design,
Yeah.
then we followed up with the engineered certified drawings for permit.
Do you recommend any contractors that you would like these are the people that I normally would use, or is it just, here you
Yeah,
go,
that's a good
here's one?
question. We work with a number of contractors, but we're not specific. We can send you a list, but it would be a list of 10 people.
Yeah.
We don't wanna send you 1 or 2 contacts.
Why not?
We just don't want you to come back and be like, why'd you send us this?
I'm asking because just to have that confidence and then, hey, you know what, these people do it right.
Oh,
Even if
absolutely.
it's 2 or 3 people, but
Yeah.
a list of 10 seems like,
Yeah, well, I would say that we're fairly confident in those 10 people.
okay.
It's just more the fact, I sometimes I would like to know maybe a little, as I'm designing with you, I start to know how you are. And then I have some contractors that I wouldn't necessarily pair up with you, just because maybe they're more straight to the point or something like that, or rude, and some people are okay with that. They're like, yeah, let's go, Tom, let's build this thing. And other people are like, okay, Tom, you're being an ass, right?
Yeah, I was gonna mention, the contractor, that depends, how they approach and how they work with you is based also on your experience. So if you're like an experienced, trying to build a home, they are gonna take advantage of that, in terms of like increasing their price, because you're not.
This is
You
why I
know,
said,
so-
like, I would rather have a recommendation than go and make a cold call and all of a sudden they're like, oh, you wanna build a tiny house, eh? All right, we have, right? And then all of a sudden from 200,000, it goes to 500 grand and.
Yeah, yeah, and that happens too.
It does.
So it is, we like to give you at least three names, if minimum, right? But yeah, if I have a list of 10 and I don't think that 5 of them are good for you, I might only send you 5,
Perfect.
you know?
No, that's good.
Because yeah, some of them can be
Yeah, we get it.
probably ex-cons, I don't know. So, yeah, go ahead.
We talked to somebody about this a while ago, and the contractors were just booked up until the middle of next year. Is that still the case?
I'm starting to see that kind of wane a little bit. We're starting to see that timeline come down. Most good contractors should be booked for a year. After that, most of them are able to fit you in. Yeah, and I shouldn't say that. A lot of contractors are able to fit projects in. But if you're calling somebody and they're like, yeah, I can come out tomorrow, I wouldn't recommend going with those guys, right? So yeah, pick your contractor wisely, obviously. But I have seen those timelines come down. Probably at least a year in terms of timing has started to come off their plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
How much disturbance will affect the existing home, the new construction, or like it still can be livable?
Oh yeah, completely livable. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't see besides the mechanical connection to the existing house, nothing should impact the existing house. Your backyard is probably gonna get ripped up. Your side yard as well, but besides that, your existing dwelling unit would be fine. Yeah. So if you had a rental with an existing tenant, that would be probably reasonable that you could go ahead. You're gonna have some sound concerns, but hopefully they work a 9 to 5 and they're gone while the contractors are there.